Welcome in, everyone, to the latest edition of the Nordic Football Podcast with Steve Wyss and Jonathan Fadugba. These are very exciting times, Jonathan. What a month of football August is. It's always manic. It's always bonkers, really, at times, and especially for us in the Scandinavian leagues with European qualifiers and everything like that. How are you doing, my man?
Hi, Steve. Hi, everyone. Yeah, definitely feels like Christmas time around the Meatman Soccer household. I see the grin on your face. You look ready for business, to be honest. We're just off the back of what could be a historic moment in Norwegian football. Steve, I'll let you sort of take it away on that. But yeah, a really exciting night in European football for one of our leagues at least, and more to come for the rest of the week. So we're going to dig into all that. We're also going to talk about the European games that happened last week. Malmö fans, look away or put a cup of tea on and come and join us. What is going on with Malmö? So we will be digging into some other results, not just this week's results, as we're back on the Nordic Football Podcast, and I'm looking forward to getting into this one.
Yeah, so am I. Lots to discuss. Obviously, the Eliteserien Allsvenskan matters, but at the top of the show, we've got to start with the European adventures of all the teams. And this, what I like about this time of the year, we can often sort of cross over both leagues quite a lot. We tend to get a lot of the matchups now with the local draws that they have with the UEFA, and comparisons of teams as well, coefficient talk. But we're recording literally about less than an hour from full time in the Champions League qualifying. Glimt 5, Sturm Graz 0. A quite incredible result and performance from Glimt. I feel like they've been waiting 5 years for this. Norway, as a nation, has been waiting 18 years for a team to make the group stage of the Champions League, or the league phase as it's known now. 5-0 up, you've got to think, they've still got to go there to Austria and get the job done. Probably just keep 11 men on the field, it should be enough. But a quite remarkable result. I wasn't shocked because I've seen it before, how they dominate teams here at Asmira. But I was very, very pleased for them because they've had a lot of close calls before. And it looks like they didn't stop. In the past, they've won the home leg in these ties, but not by enough goals. But 5-0 was a ruthless and clinical performance, which I think the Glimt fans will be very, very proud of that one.
Yeah, two headlines tonight, Steve, from the Norwegian newspapers. Dagbladet have literally, front page of Dagbladet says "done" in massive letters. And the other headline on the next headline for what the next article is, absolutely insane. So the three words there to really sum up what is an unbelievable match. Steve, I actually had to, because you are a big man on European football, the qualifiers. Like you come alive when these qualifiers come around. But I'm always a bit distracted this time of year, and I don't tend to pay too much attention on qualifiers as much as you do. So it actually slipped my mind a little bit before the match that this is the final qualifier. I was thinking it was the pre-qualifier to the next one, but this is the last one. So this is a massive result, as you've just said there, potentially something we're not seeing in nearly 2 decades. And Sturm Graz, Steve, they're the opponents. And let's be honest, and obviously I want to get your take on this. I mean, Glimt have absolutely destroyed them. I've been watching the game. Dagbladet have said it doesn't matter if it's Erling Braut Haaland, if it's Kylian Mbappe. Everyone wants to get a ticket to Buda this winter. Like, people can't believe what they're seeing. Okay, that might be a little bit extreme, but what do you say about this result? Because I mean, Glimt have had some big results over the years, but this one seems to more. This was almost the best of the lot, right? This is the crowning moment potentially of Knutsen's career.
The most important of all of them, because let's remember what's at stake here, right? We've got a minimum £16 million just for being in the league phase. But realistically, you're going to make more than that. They should get a few points here and there for prize money, sponsorships, TV, whatever you want to call it. So it's probably, getting through this round's worth about probably £25 million for Glimt. So, I mean, that's massive. Look, that's massive for any club worldwide, but especially in the Scandinavian regions. And, Sturm Graz, the 2-time champions of Austria, it was Graz who actually started well. Alisimi, veteran defender for Glimt, slipped in the third minute And I tell you what, I've mentioned him before, Hayikin, the goalkeeper for Glimt. He's a huge player for them. He never lets them down. He comes up really big for them loads of times, and that was a really big save early on. It's a weird sort of formation that Graz played. It was what you call a Christmas tree formation. Sort of, it gets narrower the more you go up the field, and you don't see it too often actually in football. And I thought they started quite brightly, but then, like the first major chance for Glimt, they scored it. Kasper Wartz-Ho, brilliant finish, and then it was 2-0 after 10 minutes. Graz then hit the crossbar with a pile driver, and it just felt maybe things are going their way here. And by half time, they got themselves the 3-0 lead. There'd been injuries to Alisimi and Mata, which was that was a bit of a blow. It could have been 4 by half time, Björkan. And then in the second half, they dominated. They finished with 5-0. It could have been 6 or 7. Graz did have a couple of chances as well, but it was men versus boys. It was men versus mice. Like I say, it was more, like I say, for some Sturm Graz's point of view. You're going to like this one. I've been sort of thinking what I could say. It was more mice, not Edelweiss.
You've definitely been thinking that one. I mean, I did say to the listeners, he's come prepared tonight, Steve. He's got the eye of the tiger at this point. If you could see his face, he looks ready, lean, and ready for this. And Glimt have also turned up ready and lean. I mean, I think my observation of the game was, I have to say, the first start, sort of 45, 50 minutes, Stone Graz looked like they didn't know what to hit them. Like they looked like they'd been hit by a train. They were absolutely all over the place, to be honest. Shaken to the core, I think, would be a good description of sort of the looks in their faces at certain points in this game. Lars Giannis, I hope that's pronounced correctly, on Twitter X, he put, "I've used up most of my superlatives for Glimt, but what they're doing tonight is exceptional." He's quite a famous sort of personality, football expert in Norwegian football, covering Norwegian football. Steve, we'll go through the goals. We'll have a little look at what's exactly transpired, and then sort of I'll ask you if you think that the headline from Dagbladet is correct. Is this done? The goals, as we say, were scored by Kasper Wartz-Ho in the 7th minute, Bjortov in the 10th minute, Saltnes in the 25th minute, and that was the point where, when he poked that home and near post the keeper, Graz's players, like, they just look stunned, mate. They look like in the whirlwind. Then we go to the second half. Evian made it 4-0, and then the Boving on goal made it 5-0. Steve, Glimt went in a sort of 4-3-3. Their traditional formation, didn't they? Saltnes, Berg, Evian in the midfield. Mata went off at half time. Spencer Hauger got 2 assists. Kasper Wartz-Ho a goal. Björkan from left back got an assist. Bjortov got a goal from defence. Everything's gone right there. You've mentioned the goalkeeper, even Heiken. It's like an elite performance, isn't it? It's like a dream performance. And Kjetil Knutsen said so after the game as well himself.
Do you know what I really am impressed with is I think they finally learned their lessons. I said this on a betting show earlier in the day that I felt like they were starting to learn their lessons in the Europa League run last year when they beat Olympiacos 3-0, when they beat Lazio by a couple of goals. In the past, they would have been happy with just a 1-goal win, getting the win in the home leg. But they know now they've had think of those experiences they had in Zagreb and Belgrade, where they only went there with a 1-goal lead. It wasn't enough. And they know this. And they knew they couldn't go to Austria with just a 1-goal lead or even a 2-goal lead. And I had a feeling that they would just keep putting the hammer down. And I think Sturm Graz would just rock by that. I think Sturm Graz expected sort of 2-0, 3-0, we'll just keep it at that. But they kept coming at them. And Sturm Graz, I've seen this before where teams go to here at Asmira Stadion. The artificial surface is a killer for these teams. They can't get their pass length correct on it. The distance is always wrong. And Glimt always know the perfect distance of pass. In fact, you could actually tell the lad who come on, Jurgensen, for the injured Mata, they signed him £3 million from Aalborg just a few weeks ago. You can tell he's not quite up to speed with the team yet, or perhaps the surface yet. This takes years, quite a long time to get used to. The system's incredible. The midfield again, Saltnes, Berg, Evian, it's exceptional. Ho finished the chances well. Jens Petter Horger's brilliant on. Them 5 players are splendid. They really are. And I'll tell you what, I mean, as long as they don't do anything stupid in Austria now, for me, it's done. It certainly wouldn't have been done if it was only 1 or 2 goals. Because don't think Sturm Graz are as bad as that scoreline has made them look. They do have some good players in that team. Definitely got some good technical players. But it should be done now at 5-0. And do you know what? I think Bodo Glimt are very capable of beating a big team at home in the Champions League. I don't know who it would be. Probably not a Premier League team. We know that the Premier League teams are their kryptonite, really. But maybe like a German side or a Serie A team would come up there and get stunned. Someone like a Dortmund, you could just see them coming up there and having a shock loss, couldn't you? Or maybe even someone like Inter Milan, who we don't know what we're going to get with them this year. So let's see. Well, let's get them through first. Let's not completely count chickens. But I think we need. By the way, Glimt are scheduled to be in pot 3 if they make it through. Pot 3, which I'm not sure is a good thing because pot 4 has some ridiculously good teams in it, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, Steve, let's not get too carried away. I was on mute there, I think, before I interrupted you. Let's not get. I mean, it's not done yet, so they're not in pot 3 yet. Kit Knudsen came out and said, winning 5-0 is absolutely indescribable. That's a word you can use. I think our first half is massive. Where we showed the top level of Glimt. These are small margins, but that's the margins that are in football. There's still 1 game left, or is this sort of final comment? And that was what I was going to ask you, Steve. I mean, is there 1 game left? I mean, obviously there is 1 game left, but is there 1 game left? Is it done? We've seen some shocks in football, so I'm hesitant to say they're through and start talking about pot 3s and who they're going to play. But, Glimt have, like you said in the past, they have on occasions fallen at the final hurdle. Could the nerves get to them? Could the nerves get to them in the final stage? And you mentioned teams haven't adapted to the surface. To be fair, Spurs is the only one who ever did. When the one time I thought they'd batter Spurs in that semi-final. And, in fairness to Spurs, that showed how good that side wasn't adapting to the conditions. But in that semi-final, but yeah, your perspective on the second leg. What can Graz do? What will Glimt do? It's probably going to affect maybe their preparations for the next game. You would have thought maybe in the league, will they rotate and sort of really go for it, or will they just full steam ahead? Got a question here, listener question from, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Big Sig. He is first to the question marks, and he says, just to add on to the question I've just asked you there, he says, Budo have pulled back a huge points deficit in the league, but with the Champions League on the horizon, will they prevail in the league? So let's just talk about, is this a done deal in terms of is Graz got anything up their sleeve? You said they're not a bad team. And then looking ahead to the league, how will this affect their league form in the short term? Like I say, in the next game, 2 games, and then from there.
Well, what I will say is Bodo Glimt don't have a match this weekend. It's pre-arranged, so they were always going to have this weekend off. So they've got a full 7 days to prepare for the second leg. I don't think they'll take the second leg lightly because they've been working for years to get to this moment.
Is that? Can I just ask quickly? Is that pre-arranged, as in the league have agreed it?
Yeah. This was sorted out at the start of the season. They knew the dates they were in.
That's very kind.
They do it for all the teams in Europe. To be fair, they I think even Allsvenskan did it for Malmö this year for one of the ties that they're in.
So they've got a full week to prepare for this next game. Then.
Full week, so they can focus fully on it. And I don't think they'll. I mean, after that, they've got Sandefjord 3 or 4 days later away, which is a tough game. Sandefjord, great home record this season. But I don't think they'll take it lightly because, A, the amount of money involved and the ambitions and motivations, they've been working towards this for years. I wouldn't, and this is me, you know me, I can sometimes get a bit giddy. And, even I wouldn't be taking this as a done deal yet because you put so much effort into it. All it takes is, look, funny things can happen in football, last man red card, and suddenly you're under the cosh, aren't you? So, but really, they've got probably Sturm Graz where they want them. Sturm Graz, I think, will probably win the second leg, but they're going to have to take so many risks that Glimt on the counter attack probably will score. And you're probably looking in the second half, it might be like 2-1, maybe to Sturm Graz with 10 or 15 minutes to go, and I think they'll both kind of shake hands, if you know what I mean, without shaking hands. It's a massive deficit to make up for Sturm Graz. They'll have to play out their skins to get this against Bodo Glimt now. And I don't think Glimt will take the second leg lightly at all. It'll be full strength. Got to be.
So in answer to the big six question, potentially won't affect them in the league, and yeah, you think they're gonna be up for it. I mean, they will be up for it. Like, to be honest, they've waited so they. It's a big moment, really, isn't it? Because they've waited so long for this. To be fair, they've been really going for this achievements and accolades in Europe. Obviously, last
They have.
season with the semi-final, it kind of that was maybe potentially going to be their crowning moment if they'd have got to a final. This feels like the crowning moment's come now, and this has been, like I said, it's been a long time coming. This has been a long time in the making. These European runs, we're talking sort of 3-4 years here at least, with good results, but then maybe falling just when it counts, in key games or in key situations where they're still the underdog, really, but they managed to sort of elevate themselves to a point where you think they could actually pull off a major upset, like say the Spurs game, or like you said, Zagreb, places where they've had disappointments last minute, or late on. So this is a massive game, Steve. In the context of sort of, I saw an interesting comment about where this puts Norwegian football. With the World Cup coming up as well, potentially, Glimt getting into the Champions League proper. That is huge. Like you said, the money to be earned. They can earn, I think it's something like 500,000,000 Norwegian crowns, like you said, which is about 25 million plus minimum. In the context of sort of Norwegian football, where do you put this in terms of if they were to make it? Maybe not 500,000,000, a bit lower than that in Norwegian crowns, but yeah, you get my point. About 350. Where do you put this in the context of just Norwegian football in general? Because, as I say, there's a potential here. They've got the national team's now got some big games coming up. They play Italy. They could have a team in the Champions League, and if they did end up with a team in the World Cup as well, they've got some very good players at the national level. Like, Norwegian football's on the up here at the moment, isn't it? Is this a wider thing? With put this Glimt thing into context.
Well, we know the coefficient for Norway's been rising up steadily the last few years. Bodø/Glimt, big part of that. Molde, of course, did pretty well too, to help the coefficient going forward, and that's the reason they entered in the final qualifying round as well, because of their own coefficient. And also the league coefficient. Bodø/Glimt very nearly made the league stage automatically. It's complicated to explain, but they were basically done by, I think, Olympiacos just on coefficient. So they were very, very close to just going in without having to even qualify. 18 years since Norway last had a team in the league phase. I think there was Rosenborg in the season that Jose Mourinho got sacked. 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge. It's a long time. Now, it's not necessarily good for a lot of the other clubs, of course, because Glimt would get a lot of money from this. However, I'll give you an example. The way the coefficient's gone now, if you win the Norwegian league, just say Viking won the league, which is quite possible this season. I mean, Big Sig's asked the question there. Viking are out of Europe now. Bodø/Glimt are going to be looking like in the Champions League, at least Europa League. Viking could win the league. If they win the league, they will enter the same stage of qualifying next year for the Champions League. And even if they lost that, they're guaranteed Europa League football. That's worth about, 10 million? This can have a knock-on effect down the line. It's very lucrative now. It's going to be a great time the next few years to finish in the top 3 or 4 in the Eliteserien. And then the national team, that's a sort of a different matter because, anyone really good does leave the country quite young now. But it's maybe no coincidence that the national team is on the rise again, looking like qualifying for the World Cup. So, yeah, these are good times. I mean, if the coefficient got in the top 10, which, I mean, that's a stretch. But if you get in the top 10 coefficient, one of your teams is guaranteed to be in the league phase, whatever. So, yeah, these are interesting times for Norwegian football. And it's got to be, I think, overall a positive. There'll be some fans out there worrying because, there might be, I said before, Glimt have the potential to dominate in future years with the money they get. But, yeah, go on.
From that point of view, and, you just touched on it there. So is this good for Norwegian football, or could you phrase this as bad for Norwegian football? Because in one way, Norwegian football owes Glimt to thank you, right? Because they've elevated the coefficient massively. You've just said they're Viking. As an example, we could get to the point, and that's mainly through Glimt, I think, isn't it? Their exploits. The coefficient's mainly gone up because of
course
one team. Yeah. So the rest of the teams probably owe, and I think I remember we had an interview with Rosenborg's technical director, didn't he, where he said the Glimt have elevated Norwegian football for us. Do the rest of the league owe Glimt a thank you? Or is this a bit of a double-edged sword where the Champions League millions could actually turn this into a bit of a closed shop. What's your perspective on that? Is this sort of like, in a way, do we need Viking to then win the league, for the quality of the league? Because if Glimt kind of get the Champions League money and win the league, then it could end up being like a Germany type thing. Well, does the league owe them a thank you, or does the league be a little bit worried, just in brief?
I think from a neutral perspective, it'd probably be good to see Viking win the league now, yeah. And that's coming from someone who, I've always had this soft spot for Bodo in recent years. It is a double-edged sword, but Malmö have qualified for the Champions League before. Certainly was it 5 years ago, maybe something like that. And they didn't always make the most of that money. Yeah, Malmö tend to win 3 out of 5 league titles, don't they, in Sweden on average? So it's not necessarily a complete close shot, but Glimt could blow all the money. They might lose the manager. They might drop down the level they've been at. But if they are, the danger is if they continue to be as well run as they have been, then they could dominate. But it's still only a 30-game season in Norway. Players come and go, and no matter these players eventually do want to probably try their arts in other leagues, don't they? So there's still a lot of challenges developing. But Brann, here's an example for Brann. They finished second last season, so they got into Champions League qualifying. Okay, they're not going to be in the Champions League, but they could still make the Europa League, and at worst case, they're in the Conference League. Now, that wouldn't have happened if that coefficient was lower. So, Brann are going to make, at least 6-7 million from Conference League, possibly 10 plus million if they get in Europa. That's got to be a positive for me. And then, can they use that money to build themselves? There's still quite a lot of things you can do with that sort of money.
So in summary, you'd probably say Glimt, Norwegian footballers, Glimt to thank you. Very interesting debate. And congratulations to Glimt, massive result. It's not done yet, but maybe in the next show we could start talking about coefficients and pots, and they're going to be playing, Steve, and they might be in the burnabout at this rate. They won't be going to Old Trafford though, but that is a different story. Steve, you just mentioned Malmö there.
Yes.
I don't know if that was, clever sort of clever segue. You're a veteran of this podcast game now, or if it was just natural, unnatural, and you just had them on your mind. But let's get into them, because
you've been wanting to get into them.
I've been waiting for a week.
Let me set the scene for Malmö, because Malmö, the positive for Malmö is that they are guaranteed to be in minimum the Conference League group stage.
Well, wait. First, let's, obviously, for listeners who haven't listened, maybe not listened to the show and haven't seen, let's recap what happened. Before we get into
in the previous round of Champions League qualifying.
Before we get into the ramifications,
we have got Malmö against FC Copenhagen, dubbed the Battle of the Bridge. A famous bridge over the strait there. Is it the Oresund Bridge or something like that? And two clubs that there is certainly a rivalry, more on the Malmö part perhaps. First leg ended 0-0. Second leg ended 5-0 to FC Copenhagen. I've got a few things to say after this. I'm going to let you take the floor though here, really, about both legs, Jonathan. I think certainly the second leg, because the ramifications of this are quite big, it feels.
Well, like you said, and normally we do one part of Sweden, one part of Norway. We will get to part 2. We will talk about Norway in part 1. But obviously the European section we'll sort of interchange. I do have to say, Steve, that I did text you about a week ago about this, didn't I? And we were on the text. I think you texted me first, maybe, or maybe I texted you. I think I said,
I need to find these texts now, because
a few choice words were explained at that point, because the final score of that match in the end, that Steve, as you just said there, the second leg, it was 0-0 first leg, which we did talk about, I think, on the last episode. If you go back, and for loyal listeners who listen to every show, you would have seen that little debate, I believe. But then, Steve, what we then witnessed last week just shocked and disgusted me, to be quite honest. What? I don't even know how to phrase this, but how do I phrase this? Yeah, Copenhagen, FC Copenhagen 5, Malmö 0, Steve. Now, I can't remember the text because you'll tell me about them, but I have to say, as capitulations go, and I'll be honest, I saw that I did see this coming, didn't I? Did I not say to you in the previous show that I've not been impressed with Malmö? But even my level of not impressedness was not prepared for what happened here. Copenhagen 5, Malmö 0. Goals in the 31st minute. Huescas. Robert scored 2. El Yanusi got 1 in the 51st minute. And Matson got 1 to just cap off all the damage. He looked a decent player, by the way, Robert, this Brazilian winger that Copenhagen have got. But Malmö, Steve, absolutely destroyed. They've been rotating their team, trying to prepare, keep fresh. They've got a big squad. I don't know where to begin on Malmö, but I'll tell you where I will begin, Steve. I'll begin with the FC Copenhagen manager's comments because they were explosive. And the fallout from this has been big. So I'll just read you some of the words from Jacob Niestrup about the match. And to be fair, I quite without comment. Obviously, no disrespect to Malmö or Malmö fans, but I think he had some choice words for Malmö. He said, so there was a bit of beef basically. Obviously, this is a close, like you said, this is almost a local derby basically. This is closer to Malmö than a lot of Allsvenskan games. They're very close to each other. You can get very quickly from Malmö to Copenhagen. You know, there is some beef. There's also beef, Steve, related to a game from many years ago. I think more than 20 years ago that even Pontus Jansson alluded to in a previous match they played. So there is a bit of needle in this sort of fixture, Steve, that just goes back, and there's a bit of historic rivalry. There's also the sort of beef, Steve, where I think it was essentially. I think there was an incident where Danish police about 20 years ago were accused of excessive force against Malmö fans. So there's a bit of a bubbling, context behind it. The fans not massive fans of each other, like any derby. And then also, Steve, there's the context of the fact that obviously Copenhagen are a normal, not a normal club, but, Malmö are a member-owned club, like every club in Allsvenskan, right? The 51% rule exists, whereas Copenhagen are not like that. So they have a bit more of a budget maybe. So after the 0-0, Steve, Pontus Jansson and Henrik Rydström were interviewed, and they came out and said that they're the underdogs. They portrayed themselves as the underdogs. They played the card, Steve, that obviously any underdog does, right? Well, our budget is this. Copenhagen are massive favourites. It would be a massive disappointment if they were to not win this game. Trying to sort of Mourinho mind games, turn it against them. But Jacob Niestrup, Steve, was not happy about these comments. So I'll just read you what he said after the 5-0. This was a well-deserved and superior victory in every respect. We played a controlled away game, and we felt we could show the difference in class at home. And he says he didn't expect there would be such a big difference, but he, in terms of the 5-0 result. But he said, I feel that when it comes to the approach at press conferences before the match, there has been a massive difference between our two clubs. Already last weekend, before the first match, coaches and players in Malmö sat and talked about our club's structure. They showed us a big disrespect towards what we've built in Copenhagen. They've built themselves in a different way, and I have respect for that. But we are two different clubs, he said. I'll carry on. And this is where it gets juicy. I think they have showed a low level of respect. We've deserved more through our hard work over many, many years. When coaches and players in Malmö sit and talk about budget differences and salaries for players and coaches, then I knew we would win. They are focused on the differences in finances, and I think today we have shown that the difference between the two clubs is gigantic. He then went on to say, Steve, so he's absolutely hammered Malmö there for their behaviour before the match. He's then gone on to say essentially words to the effect of, you don't get anything for being disrespectful to the opponent before a match. We have a lot of respect for their coach and what they have achieved. They have some exciting players, but to be completely honest, I was surprised that the rivalry is as big as it is. I was surprised by the hatred, and we chose a clear strategy. And I told the players, shut up before the match. We're a big club. I told the communications manager not to respond to these comments. I'm an experienced manager, and I'm glad my players are experienced. It was a clear strategy. And I told my players, we are a big club, and in big clubs, you don't talk around and be disrespectful about other opponents' club structures. I have a lot of respect for Malmö. It's a great story, but we are a different club, and we showed the difference in class tonight. We've earned this place through hard work. We don't have a sugar daddy, and I think they lack respect. They've almost made it sound like Pontus Jansson and Robin Olsen play for free for Malmö, and I very much doubt they play for free. So there was also, Steve, a bit of an exchange after the match finished. He went to the Malmö bench, so he was pointing and kind of like he had a few words for Rydström. Steve, this was a bit of a spicy game, and as you can tell from his comments, he was not at all happy with the way Pontus Jansson and Malmö in general. Essentially, he felt disrespected by them. And I'll be honest, Steve, obviously I want to get your comment on it. And Pontus Jansson used to play for your club, Leeds. But I do think the Malmö do get a bit of a reputation for this. They do tend to do this quite a lot. They do sort of speak a lot in games, before games. Rydström and Jansson in particular, they do have a word or two. And in Sweden, it's quite fun, and they usually come out on top of it because they're better than most clubs. So their banter normally you can't be replicated because they'll win on the pitch. But it looks as if they've come a cropper here, Steve, a little bit and met their match.
Yeah, I found those texts now, actually. I started things off. I said, this is the 5-0 result. I said, Jonathan, this is rough. And then you've come back and
Hang
said,
on, you can't say too much. All I said.
Well, no, you have said that that you will rip into them for the next episode. So yeah, I will get some thoughts on this after it. But what on the field here? What went wrong? 0-0 first leg. They didn't have a shot on target. They didn't have a corner. Second leg, 5-0, absolutely blown apart. I mean, this shouldn't be such a huge difference between FC Copenhagen and Malmö, should they really? But it looks like they were miles apart. So, I mean, Henrik Rydström, we know he was rumoured to have been on Brighton's managerial shortlist when they hired Fabian Hetzala. Yeah, this is a very well respected and known coach, but every tactic he seemed to throw at the match didn't work. What went wrong? What went so badly wrong?
Yeah, well, to be honest, Steve, I mean, after the game, Pontus Jansson came out and he criticised his Malmö teammates, and he said, you need to care about the badge. He was very critical of the players. And there's been a lot of rumours now saying about Rydström and his job. He had to come out and he said, I'm the man for the job. So this had big repercussions in terms of Malmö fans. They're fuming to lose like that. On the pitch, Steve, I'll be honest, and I said this on the last episode that I'm not impressed. I haven't been impressed with Malmö. So I did kind of see this coming in a way. Not a 5-0, but I didn't see them getting through this two-legged tie. But I actually started to think they were I started to worry about Malmö, Steve, when I saw the Osters game and the Bromma game. They won 2-0 away at Osters, but they were very disappointing in my opinion. They needed a Haksabanovic world-class goal, and then they also just rolled over the line, really. And the Bromma game, they won 3-2, but I actually thought they were poor in that match. I really thought they were really poor. And those were the two games before the Mjällby game, Steve, which of course they lost, which knocked them out of the title race. So this has been a bad few weeks for Malmö. They've been knocked out of the title race at home to Mjällby, who by the way did a number on them again. We didn't get to talk about that last week, but Malmö have absolutely done a number on them. And then Copenhagen just put the knife in and absolutely destroyed them. And I saw it coming, Steve, because they haven't impressed. They're not. There is something wrong with Malmö's squad at the moment. The balance is not right of the team. There's too much rotation, in my opinion. It's all well and good. And this is one thing I don't like about some teams, right, Steve? It's all well and good coming out now and beating Halmstad 4-0 away once you've lost all your key matches and you're out of the title race. Okay, save that 4-0 for when it's really important. Do you know what I mean? Like, anyone can beat Halmstad for a top club like Malmö. It's like, I really don't like players who turn up when, do you know what I mean? They suddenly turn up when it's kind of like, it's too late. Where were you in those big moments? It's well a good scoring away to Halmstad. They've got 100, if you want to talk about budgets, you can compare the Halmstad and Malmö budget, but you wouldn't see Halmstad too much talking about budgets, So I do think some of the comments from the FC Copenhagen manager were valid because Malmö are no underdogs at this level. And you only need to look at Glimt as a reason, as a vindication of that. Glimt have built this over many years with a set playing style, a set manager. They've balanced sort of having to challenge in the league. They've balanced having to go into Europe and play big games, and they've been prepared for it. Malmö have not. And I think psychologically, Steve, Diff's run to the European Conference League semi-finals has knocked Malmö a little bit as well in terms of the fans, because there's a feeling like, well, if they can do it, why can't we do it? We're the big dogs in this league. So I do there is a bit of a context, Steve, of a bit of like, even before the season around Malmö, of like something's not quite, fans aren't quite satisfied there. I think that that Djurgården cup run really, I think that psychologically has knocked Malmö a little bit this season, just in general, in terms of where do they sit in the European food chain? Because they want to do what Glimt are doing. They want to do what Djurgården doing, playing Chelsea in the semi-final. And they're just not doing it, Steve. And this was why it's compounded by this 5-0 battering. When you look at the pitch, I think there's a lot of players, Steve, that I would describe as sort of 10 out of 10 on one day, 3 out of 10 on another day. And I think they've got a few too many of them at this moment in time, without sort of naming names. I think there's a few but they've got such a good squad that it's kind of, the rotation is almost like Rydström's rotating, trying to get those 10 out of 10s, you know what I mean? And he doesn't quite even know himself, maybe.
Has the rotation been a problem the last 2 years?
Yeah, I think it's a massive problem. I mean, one of the best performers in recent weeks has been Daniel Gudjonsson up front, and he's a youngster. So they've got young kids who are coming in and having an impact. I don't think Hugo Bolin, for example, has had an amazing season. Taha Ali, I think he's flattered to deceive at times. I praised him earlier in the season, but in the big games when it counts, have they got enough characters really, in terms of not character, but just people who will get the job done? In games where you're looking at them, who's going to score for you, who's going to impact the dressing room. Keith Tellin has obviously left, and they've missed. They have missed the striker who's been out for a while. Of course, they have had some injury problems. But really, I mean, apart from Otto Rosengren, I think, who's had a consistent level of performance, even the likes of like the rocks that you'd really back, like Busanello, who over the years have been really solid, their level's gone down a little bit this year, Steve, and it's reflected in the league, and it's reflected in this result against Copenhagen. It's a real disappointment for Malmö, because they kind of banked their whole season on this, really, but after what happened with Mjällby, and to go out with a whimper like that is just, is really poor. And I'm not surprised that there's now rumours about Rydström's job. That's a bit extreme because of what he's achieved. He's achieved a lot, but this game has got massive repercussions, I think, around, and I think it's going to have repercussions for the whole squad. To be honest, I think that I could see a little bit of a clear outcome in the next few months, because I think they're going to realise that maybe this massive squad of theirs, maybe there's one too many bluffers in it, and people that you can't necessarily rely on. The likes of Oliver Berg, players who you just don't know quite what you're going to get from week to week, and I think that's what's hampered them compared to a team like Mjällby or Hammarby, where you pretty much know what you're going to get from those players. They're more consistent.
It was about a year ago to the day where I thought things were really on the up for Malmö. They had got past PAOK in the Champions League qualifying. Do you remember? It felt like they'd really turned the corner. And then they got knocked out by Sparta Prague, which at the time was a disappointment. I think that was final qualifying, actually. But anyway, yeah, it felt like they were moving in the right direction. But since then, it does feel like they've gone downhill a bit. They should never be so far afield of FC Copenhagen. For me, the actual metrics, by the way, over the two legs aren't terrible for Malmö, which that in itself, it didn't really show what happened on the field, because physically they were nowhere. FC Copenhagen physically bullied them. I think there's too many lightweight players in the squad for Malmö in midfield and attack. There's some they're lovely technical guys like Tahar Ali and players like that, but they were physically bullied by Copenhagen. That was a big problem for me. And then I guess when it's a mismatch like that, it is quite hard tactically to maybe get something on top of them. But the best 11, I have no idea what it is. The manager doesn't know what it is. We talked about Glimt just now. We could name, both of us, 9 or 10 of that best 11. And it's been the same for like 2 years. We definitely couldn't do that with Malmö. So now let's talk about the ramifications of it. They're going to play a team called Sigma Olomouc. I don't know if I pronounced that right. They are the cup champions from the Czech Republic. Beat Sparta Prague in the final last year as a 4-1 shot. This is their first appearance in Europe this season. It's actually quite a kind draw. If they win, if they get over the two legs, then they'll be in the Europa League. If they lose, then they're going to be in the Conference League. Some might argue they're better off in the Conference League for competitive reasons. Obviously, the money's better in Europa. But, I think I said to you after last week, I don't think there's even a guarantee that they'll beat the 6th best team from the Czech Republic if they keep playing like this.
Yeah, I think to summarise, obviously we'll move on because we will talk about them eventually, later on as well. But I think you're right, and I think Steve, the way I describe it is, and this might be a little bit harsh, but I think they've got fat off the land a little bit, to be honest, Malmö. I think they're too good for Sweden at times, or over the past 2-3 seasons. They've dominated the league, and Rydstrom's rightly got plaudits. Like, let's not go too far. I think he's been really good over the last 2 years. Malmö have been really good over the last 2 years. They're an excellent club. But I just feel this season just feels to me like they've got a little bit fat off the land, Steve. Too many cherries and not enough pudding base, on the cake that they're making. It's just too much cream. They've got too
Yeah,
much cream in the team and not
yeah.
enough sort of flour and eggs, really. And I think that's the problem. A bit too many flair players, a bit too many kind of like you've just said. I think you've hit the nail on the head a little bit. Lacking. I think they really missed players like Cornelius, for example, who left a rock at the centre back. They've just lost that kind of physicality a little bit, in my opinion, that robustness. Jensen obviously has injury problems now. He's a bit older, so he's in and out of the team at times. And I think they've just, like I say, lost a bit too much flour and eggs for the cake, really, and they've got too many cherries. We'll move on because obviously, we've dwelled on those two teams, and obviously Europe is a massive thing, isn't it, Steve? Like you said, at this time of the year, it's always juicy to talk about these runs or these defeats. But I've got to talk about a team that I'm really intrigued by. Actually, I've been looking forward to this episode. And Steve, I've been on Fredrikstad's Twitter, and it's actually been getting me excited. I even looked at the game, Steve, and started thinking, shall I go? Shall I try and get tickets? Crystal Palace against Fredrikstad, Steve. That is a sort of game that gets my juices going. It's actually on Channel 5 apparently in the UK. If you're in the UK, so I will be tuning in if I can. Palace, who are a team that I think are fantastic. I really like Glasner. I think he's a top manager. I really love watching his teams in general. Against the mighty Fredrikstad. How has this even come about? Because I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I don't know enough about Fredrikstad, to be fair. I was looking into their manager. I know they've got some key players as well. Let's face it, they're going to be up against Selhurst Park, but at least the breaking news tonight saying that Eberechi Eze is probably going to Arsenal means that he might not be involved, Steve. So their odds have got a little bit more in their favour. But I love the pictures from their Twitter, just like of the stadium. And Fredrikstad as a club are really soaking this in, Steve. Talk to me about how they got here. Talk to me about the last few weeks in terms of what they've been preparing, and talk to me about what this means for them, and also the manager a little bit in the squad, because for me this is a bit of a fairy tale for me. They might end up losing 7-0, but Fredrikstad in Europe is just that's what I think that Europe is made for. These teams that you rarely get in Europe.
Well, 30 years ago, this would have been a genuine clash in the Cup Winners' Cup. Remember that competition? The FA Cup winners against the Norwegian Cup winners. That is how Fredrikstad are in at this stage. They entered Europa League because the Norway coefficient's a lot better now. But they were well beaten by FC Midtjylland over 2 legs. And this is where I might owe Denmark a slight apology. Certainly Copenhagen and Midtjylland, I think, are legitimately good sides. So it's no disgrace to lose against them over 2 legs. And this is it's both, I think, a good draw and a bad draw, isn't it? Because they're not going to get through against Crystal Palace. They are 33-1 to win the first leg at Selhurst Park. What chance have they got against Premier League opposition over 2 legs? But, this is what it's all about, isn't it? You qualify for Europe. I think they'd have probably signed up for facing a Premier League side twice, even if, it's going to deny them a spot in the group stage of the Conference League, which is only 6 matches anyway. So I think it's a nice sort of consolation to a degree. The fans, they're gonna. This is. I saw a tweet from the official account today about the home leg in response, and apparently tickets are only going to be offered to fans on a certain app within the club because they're worried that just general Tom, Dicks and Harrys from that area, from Norway, want to watch a Premier League side at home. We know how big the Premier League is in Norway, so it's a huge fixture for them. They're loving life, and they're going to get a lot of exposure from this game. It's got to be overall actually a big positive, even if they get absolutely battered and bruised. Crystal Palace could win the whole competition. That's how unlucky the draw is from a sporting sense. But it's exciting, isn't it? I really hope they'll give it the best go possible. I hope they give a great account of themselves. I hope they score in both legs to give the fans something to cheer.
Yeah, honestly, for me, I'm really excited. But I think partly also Palace. Palace have never been in Europe before either. I think the furthest they've ever got was the Intertoto. So from their point of view as well, it's just got a bit of a good feel to it. This game, I like the two sides in terms of what they stand for. And I mean, yeah, like you said there about the Danish teams, Michelin beat them 5-1 on aggregate, Fredrikstad in the previous round. So they're really up against it if they're going to elevate their game to play a team like Palace. But then again, Steve, like I said, no Eze, potentially. Palace Glasgow's been complaining about the lack of funds to rejig his squad. You take Eze out of that team, they don't have a huge amount of flair. I mean, they've got a couple of players that are, still very good, but you never know. Guehi's distracted. Who knows? But Steve, I just want to sort of just talk to me a little bit about the before we move on them, like the coach Hagen. I think he's a young manager. They've got some interesting players as well, haven't they? I think there's a player that they've got called, is it Oscar Olenschläger, a Danish player who's scored a couple of goals I saw against Molde, for example. Just talk to me a little bit about the makeup of the squad, because they're a relatively newly promoted side, aren't they? We shouldn't forget that. So how has this evolution come about through the manager, and who are the key players to watch if you are tuning in on Channel 5, for example?
They're a big club, Fredrikstad. They went down in the doldrums in the last decade, came back up gradually. Promotion season last year, of course, and then won the Norwegian Cup. And they're sort of mid-table right now this campaign. The manager, Andreas Hagen, was the understudy to the current AIK manager in Sweden. So it was sort of like a promotion from within. But he's got a good record: 32 matches, 1.63 points per game. He averaged 1.82 points per game in when he was caretaker manager last season as well. So he knows the group players. They've played generally sort of 3-5-2 system this season and in recent years as well. From a transfer perspective, they just signed Johan Nunes from KFUM Oslo. So I don't know if he'll be eligible for this game. I don't think he will be eligible for this game, actually. But they've been known for a solid defence, really, in recent years, more than anything. Nunes will give them something in attack, definitely worth watching out for if he is. I don't think he will be eligible, but I'm not sure about that one. So, yeah, you're looking at sort of a hard-nosed style, disciplined, and good from set pieces. They've got a good long throw on them and stuff like that. And like I say, quite a big club, one of the biggest club stadiums in Norway, and a club perhaps on the rise again. And I hope they can maybe make the most of this run. They'll get some money from this, whatever, and maybe it can kickstart them so they can always be sort of in the top 10 in Norway now going forward.
Yeah, when you look at the metrics for Fredrikstad in terms of Eliteserien and our partners Y Scout Huddle, thank you to them as always. You kind of see that they are kind of mid-table for both expected goals and expected goals against. So they're not a team that's pulling up trees in either metric necessarily, but like maybe an all round quite well drilled squad. And was there any key man that could maybe swing this in their favour at some point, Steve, before we move on?
No, I mean, unfortunately, they lost probably the best player, the goalkeeper. Jonathan Fisher's gone now to Metz in France. He would have been the one. So I wouldn't say there is now a player, a key man as such. When you just lost your key man, it's not great, is it?
No, that's not going to help, is it? Especially when you've got Mateta to deal with. So, good luck to Fredrikstad. I'm going to be tuning in for that game if I can. I think that's a really compelling tie. Hopefully, they can keep it down the score and then take them back home. And you just never know what could happen in football. So, there's a lot of distractions around Palace at the moment. So maybe not such a bad time to play them if you're ever going to play them. Steve, we do have to talk about the other European results. And it wasn't really too much fun for the Swedish side of things, was it? I think I'll let you take it away on the two games, Brann and Rosenborg.
Yeah, I mean, Brann beat Häcken over two legs, two closely fought ties, 2-0 away win for Brann in the first leg. Häcken did beat them in Norway, but a 2-1 aggregate win for Brann. Brann now guaranteed Conference League football. Häcken do have a Conference League tie. I forgot who that's against, actually. I'll look that up. And then the other game, Rosenborg against Hammarby. I think we both expected Hammarby to beat them, didn't we? I did anyway. I think Hammarby, a very good side at the minute, and Rosenborg are more sort of maybe fourth best team in Norway right now. But they played a really pragmatic game. Really, I was quite impressed with Rosenborg's defence over the two ties. I don't know if it's something. like teams that have played in Europe before, even sort of in the last 10, 20 years. I don't know what it is. I feel like they had a bit more European nous about them, even if the players on the field hadn't really got a great amount of European experience. But it felt like from the club itself, they knew how to handle the occasion better, if you know what I mean. That's kind of a bit of a strange thing to say. And I felt that might have been a bit of a difference. So not a great... I mean, AIK knocked out as well, by the way, by Gore, or whatever they're called, from Hungary. We just dismissed them, didn't we? Something like the fifth, sixth best side in Hungary. AIK knocked out by them. Terrible, terrible result. So not a great night for Sweden at all. And Häcken could still qualify. They're playing Cluj, the Romanian side. That could be, 50-50 sort of tie. And they're in the Conference League. Sweden really could do with Häcken getting in that group stage, or league phase as it's known now. But, for Rosenborg, great result for them. They got another tough draw. They got Bundesliga opponents in Mainz. But you never know, do you? They could maybe get through that one. But yeah, I was a bit surprised that Hammarby didn't even score a goal against Rosenborg over the 2 legs.
One word answer, or as few words as possible. Was this conclusive proof? Is the Norwegian league better than the Swedish league?
Yes, I think it has to be conclusive proof. And I think, the Danish league has to be put in consideration here. Now, I don't know about Denmark against Norway, how that would sort of pan out. Maybe we might get to see it this season now. But I think at the minute, Sweden's behind both them too. It has shown signs of improvement in the Swedish league. To be fair, the Allsvenskan has improved its coefficient in the last couple of years. Djurgården really helped with that last season. But I still think there's a ways to go. And I think it comes down to just experience, teams experiencing, European matches more. And they've had some tough draws as well. Although AIK have no excuses there, do they?
No excuses at all, and we'll get to them maybe later in the show. There's a few things, rumblings going on there as well. Fans not happy. Steve lost to IFK Göteborg at the weekend as well, which didn't help. And the two sort of historic rivals in some ways. Yeah, and on the question of Denmark against Norway, it's an interesting one. But I suppose the Midtjylland 5, Fredrikstad 1 result kind of maybe gives a little bit of an illusion. But then again, Fredrikstad are only recently newly promoted, so that might be a little bit of a harsh assessment. But yeah, it's an interesting one, Steve. So yeah, Häcken, I'll be honest, I wasn't surprised. They haven't impressed me really much this season. Hammarby, I think you touched on it there quite well in terms of Rosenborg. I think I've just got more nous about Europe. I think they're a little bit more of a bigger institution in terms of historically, whereas Hammarby are quite a new force, relatively experienced in terms of winning things. So maybe a little bit of that old magic came back for Rosenborg and took them through, because I think they are quite evenly matched, those two teams. So it was a very sort of insightful week, if you're comparing the two leagues, or a few weeks, I should say. But leave your comments as well. Let us know what you think. Which is the better league, Norway or Sweden? Text us or tweet us at Nordic Football, or leave a comment. There are quite a few comments on Spotify lately. And you can also leave comments on our YouTube channel, Nordic Football Podcast YouTube, or on Patreon, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast for those who support us. So feel free to let us know what your opinion is on the two leagues. Which is better? And where does Denmark fit into all that? Steve, we'll move on. And now it's time for Eliteserien. I want to talk about a few things. I know you first want to speak about the three-way title battle. We did touch on it a little bit, so let's not speak about Glimt too much. But there's been some quite big results. Let's just sort of tuck into that a little bit. Where did you want to go with that? Obviously, Viking are the main contenders, but talk to me about the title race.
There has been some big results recently, and the end result is that we've got Bodø Glimt and Viking play the same amount of games now. They have clawed back the deficit to now be leading on goal difference. Viking actually don't play until the end of the month, but they just had a really big result. 2-1 win away against Sandefjord, last-minute own goal. Sandefjord had previously won all 8 home games, so that is not an easy place to go. Bodø Glimt go there next, by the way, to Sandefjord, so that's not a gimme. And then Brann are in third place on 36 points with a game in hand. they've just beaten Tromsø 2-1 away from home, which might have been considered quite a surprise result, actually, considering that Brann are in the middle of a European run right now themselves. So Brann are still live in this title battle. If they win the game in hand, they're only 3 points behind. Viking have got a massive advantage over both teams, though. They're not in Europe. We know Brann are going to get at least 6 games in the Conference League, possibly 8 in the Europa League. We know Glimt are going to have a lot on their plate. This is a huge chance for Viking now. They need to really make the most of this because Glimt are obviously experienced title winners and they can juggle domestic and European matches, but historically they will drop points. It's not like they're going to go and win their last 11 games. There will be points dropped. So I think it's a great chance for Viking. They may not get a better chance than this now. They've got to take this advantage and make the most of it. And the last 2, they had a bit of a wobble. They've won the last 2 games away from home. Big result against Sandefjord there. I think they can kick on. They don't have to play against each other, Bodø Glimt and Viking anymore. There is one more fixture, Viking Brann, that's on the 5th of October. Apart from that, the fixtures actually look quite straightforward to a degree compared to what they might be. When you've not got Bodø Glimt left on your slate, that's a big positive, isn't it? So I think Viking, I said it, didn't I, on the last on an episode about a month or so ago, I switched my allegiance to them, and I'm still going to stick with them, actually, just based on this. If all 3 teams had no other competition, I'd be Bodø Glimt all day long. But I've got to think that they will drop some points. So it's in Viking's hands. Can they mentally get over this hurdle? They've been close before. This is their big chance.
Haven't won the league since 1991, Viking, 8 times champions in their history. So this is a unique opportunity. Hasn't happened for, like we say, there more than 30 years. So very interesting. Games to come, Steve. Just having a quick look at their schedule, Viking. Like you said, they've got a few big clashes out the way. But next, like you said, next game is Rosenborg at home, which is a tough one. KFUM away, Molde at home, Salzburg away, and then Brann at home. So and then Tromsø away. So quite a few big games, to be fair. Even though they have got Glimt out the way, like you said, you still think they're going to take the title. In terms of the table itself, you've got them on level on points, like you said. Glimt with the far superior goal difference, mainly from goals conceded, actually, rather than goals scored. You'd think it would be Glimt blowing teams away, but Viking have scored 47 and Glimt have scored 49, so it's mainly the defence that's got them a slightly better plus 11 goal difference, better than Vikings. But in third place, we've got Brann, who've got 1 game in hand. They've played 18 to Viking and Glimt 19. And they're on 36 points. So obviously, if they were to win the game in hand, they're only 3 points off it, but with a vastly inferior goal difference. Scored way less goals, Steve, even though they've conceded the same amount as Viking. Only 33 scored. You said you think that Viking are favourites. Brann, obviously, Tromsø are the next 2 in the league. Just looking ahead to sort of some of the games that Viking have got, do you think they can navigate those games, or do you sort of foresee any potential slip-ups? Rosenborg, KFUM away is quite difficult. I've been really intrigued by KFUM recently this season. They're a team I've really got an eye on. I really like what they're doing. But they have lost a few players, haven't they?
Well, I think the toughest game on the slate for them is probably this Molde game at home, 21st of September. Molde have improved a lot recently, and they usually give a good account of themselves against Viking. The Rosenborg at home, it's probably a good time to get them, isn't it? Rosenborg just been involved in a lot of a hectic month for them for August. And then, KFUM away is not easy, is it, at the moment? But they've just lost some players. So things might be just falling their way, Viking, on the schedule slate. Salzburg away is nowhere near as hard as it looked first half of the season either. So, yeah, the next 5 on paper, can be tricky at various points in the season, but they might just be getting these teams at the right time. And then the last 5 or 6 games do look pretty damn easy, to be honest with you. The likes of Bryn, Strømsgodset, HamKam, Fredrikstad will probably be nothing to play for there. Vålerenga. Viking should win the last 5 games easily. Well, not easily, but it's not easy when you've got a title on the line, is it? But titles are not won on paper. But Bodø Glimt are the best team, definitely. But there's no doubt the European Devils will take it out of them somewhere along the line. And you could even argue that Viking have more depth to the squad now after the additions that they've added. So, look, it's in their hands. And, for me personally, good luck to all the teams involved. Brann, to be fair, they've done better than I thought they would, Brann. I think I did predict them third this season, didn't I? But I didn't expect them to still probably be in the race now. So fair play to them. They've done a lot better than I thought. But I just don't think they're as good as Glimt or Viking. So I just think they'll probably fade away a little bit in time. But win that game in hand, they're only 3 points behind, and they do still have to play both teams. So let's see how it goes. It's going to be exciting. I do hope it's a battle right to the end, and may the best team win.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting end to the season. Viking, I think it's one of those ones when you've not won a title for that many years, that games that you think are easy games suddenly become trap games, I think. So I think a long way to go, especially with the strength of Glimt, but the Champions League potentially could be a bit of a game changer in that sense. So certainly you want to keep an eye on. Steve, before we wrap up part one in terms of Norway, I do want to ask you, who is this lad that's gone to Hammarby then from KFUM? Because I said I'm quite interested in KFUM at the moment. We'll get onto Mulder a little bit and also touch on one or two other transfers and some other business in a minute. But just talk to me about KFUM Oslo, can you please? Having a pretty good season, a team that we don't cover that much in terms of title races or anything like that. But I think full value in terms of what they do. I like what they've been doing, and they've had a transfer to obviously one of the title contenders in Sweden.
Do I think KFUM Oslo have become a little bit of a victim of their own success. They started the season slow, but they're in 7th place now on 26 points in great form, but they've just lost 2 of their best players. And the 2 players that they've lost are Johan Nunes to Fredrikstad, the top scorer, and Obilor Denzel Okeke, a pacey winger, wide player to Hammarby. 6 goals, 2 assists, and this guy really can put on the afterburners, Jonathan. Quick, skillful, can play either wing. And I think he's a real handful, a physical handful and a technical handful. And he's 23 years old now, I think. Looks a good signing for about £500,000, if not more. They pocketed about just over £1 million for these 2 players, but it's a bit of a shame, isn't it, that they've had this success and these players have now, well done to the players. Of course, the players have got to be ambitious too, but Nunes has been huge for them in the 2 seasons since they got promoted. Actually, Okeke is the top scorer in the league this season for them with 6. Nunes scored 10 last season plus 6 assists, 5 goals this season and 4 assists. They're going to have to replace them too, and it's not going to be easily done. But Okeke, that's the sort of player that Hammarby are getting. I don't know if they need that type of player, but he's got to be an asset for me. He's been in brilliant form.
Yeah, he scored 2 against Rosenborg, didn't he, in one of his final matches? And obviously Hammarby couldn't beat Rosenborg, so that might have got him the deal alone. To be fair, do you think he's someone who goes straight into the team, or do you think he's someone who's going to sort of need time to adapt? Like you said, you described his attributes a little bit, but has he got the? I mean, if you're saying Norway's a better league, potentially he should be able to. But how do you see that evolving for him? Because he's someone that's been talked a lot about, especially on fantasy, hasn't he? Been a sort of fantasy player in the Norwegian Fantasy League.
I was going to add him to my fantasy team the week before he transferred away. So that he was obviously high on my list. I think he walked straight into the Hammarby team because, let's be honest, that Hammarby attack, and we'll talk a bit about Hammarby later, is there's only really one guaranteed starter in that sort of attacking third, and that's Besara, really. The rest of the lineup seems to rotate a bit out. You got likes of Majed and Tenekti. I would get this lad. Okay, I mean, you just spent £500,000, get him in the team.
Is he better than Tenekti? Is he better than Tenekti? Because Tenekti came from Norway as well.
Well, I think he's certainly he's a more a physical handful than Tenekti. Tenekti's probably got a little bit more skill and flair about him. But yeah, I mean, I'd be getting him in the team, if not starting games, then get him some significant minutes on the field there. I think he could even play as a striker in time eventually. Actually, get him behind over the top. Not that Hammarby a long ball or anything, but I think he's a good addition. It really is.
And the manager Mosgaard, he seems to be sort of play a sort of 5-4-1 system. It looks like he's got a really tight ground, hasn't he? There at KFUM. I really like. That's the sort of club I might like to go and visit one day. A few words for the manager and what he's achieved so far with them.
Splendid. Overachieving manager. You could say, in terms of the resources that he's got. But I've said it before. When I say overachieving, it might be a bit disrespectful because I think they've actually built up a squad that is a lot better than you think on paper. And when you delve deeper at the stats and the metrics and the performances, these players that he's built have been, legitimately got them where they deserve to be. So I think he deserves a lot of credit. And it reminds me of, we just talk about Hammarby there, the Hammarby manager. You're going to tell me his name. I've forgotten his name. Yeah, he came, was it Varnamo, wasn't it? It's a little bit similar. And I think, teams would be foolish not to be looking at this manager because he's shown what he can do with sort of certainly more limited resources. Why not give him a chance at a bigger club? I think a few might be knocking on the door now. Mulder haven't exactly been in great shapes recently, have they? They've improved. But, someone even to that level, I think, would be foolish not to have him on the shortlist if they ever were considering a change again.
To be fair, I even like their kit. I quite like the blend of like red and blue and white. So there's something about K-From that I'm quite attracted to actually in terms of how they play and how they go about things. And it's always nice to have a bit of an underdog story. So thank you for that, Steve.
Would you Christiansen or K-From Oslo? Who do you prefer now?
You know what? I like K-From's kit. If you were telling me what kit to get, and also I reached out to Christiansen and they haven't come back to me, so I'm a bit upset.
K-From back on the
I'm trying to get them on the pod.
The top of that list.
I've been trying to get someone from Christiansen on the pod, and they're letting me down, to be honest. But anyway, well, I'll have a think about that one. But kit-wise, I do like what K-From are doing. So shout out to K-From Oslo. That in terms of Oslo teams as well, isn't it? There's a lot of Oslo teams, and they're one of the best at the moment. So, Steve, the title of our last episode. It didn't take long for us to come up with this one, to be fair. A bit clickbaity, you might say, but in the age of AI and the internet, you need to be a bit clickbaity in YouTube videos and stuff like that. You need to grab people's attention, don't you? So we went for a title of "Is this the worst team in Eliteserien history?" Simple question, capital letters, worst. And we talked about Haugesund, and I was stunned at some point in that debate. I just couldn't believe what I was witnessing in the table. You seem fairly relaxed about it, to be honest, compared to some of the rants I've seen you perform over the years, the way they were doing. But do you think, Steve? And I don't even know if you can you pin a podcast to the dressing room wall? I don't know if that's possible. Maybe you download the episode, print it out, or print out a picture of our faces. Can you imagine a picture of me and your face in the Haugesund dressing room? Prove them wrong. Prove these ones wrong. Because out of nowhere, Steve, Haugesund, winless, and with a pathetic goals record. Sorry to say that, it's such a strong word, but a really poor goals record on the last show, Steve. Have somehow out of nowhere bucked up their ideas, haven't they? What's happened there, Steve?
Haugesund 3, Sarpsborg 2. We did the team talk for them, didn't we? Congratulations to Haugesund on getting the win. I have to say, this was just a funny game. If you actually look at the overall stats for the game, you'd think that they got battered. Nearly 30 shots for Sarpsborg to 7, 3.19 XG to 1.79. But I actually thought Haugesund were value for the win. This is one of those games where the metrics don't add up because most of the shots and stuff from Sarpsborg in the last 10 minutes. The first half was dire. There was nothing in it, hardly a shot on target from both teams. And then they got given a penalty, 51st minute. What don't you do? If you're facing a team that's down there, struggling, don't give them a leg up. Don't give them like an easy gift. And I think Sarpsborg were lazy defensively in this game, and the penalty was awarded. Carlson tucked it away. You still weren't. I still wasn't confident even when they got a penalty. They're the sort of team that will miss a penalty. Do you know what I mean? I expected them to miss the penalty. And there's a penalty as a 0.76 XG according to our partners Y Scout. For Haugesund, I think that would you even have been a 50% chance the way they've been playing this season? I wasn't confident, but he put it away. Well done to the lad. And then 2-0. Sione scored on the break, and after that, it was a bit of a bonkers game actually. Salzburg pulled a goal back, then another goal on the break for Haugesund. And I tell you now, right. There was a red card involved in the game as well. The keeper got sent off. It came forward for a corner. Basically rugby tackled someone. Otherwise, they would have got a fourth goal. But Sarpsborg had massive chances to equalise in that game, in stoppage time, in the last sort of 3-4 minutes of regulation. And it was like Holgersen had no idea how to win a football game. When you've not won for that long, you don't know how to do it, do you? And luck eventually got them over the line. The goalkeeper made some good saves. But I thought for 80 minutes they played pretty well. So I didn't want to begrudge them of that victory. And, Sarpsborg, shame on them, really, for putting in a pretty dismal display for most of the match. And, for they've not played a game since, actually. Sadly, they've won a game and they had a week off. So just when they needed some momentum. I think it's a good one for them to get the win on the board. You don't want to go the whole season without winning a game, do you? Relegation still looks extremely likely. But at least maybe they can finish with a little bit of pride now.
Yeah, you wait 4 games to get a goal, and 3 come along at once. So they're up to 8 goals now for the season in 18 games, which I'll say it's a slight improvement. I still can't believe what I'd seen in the last round when I saw that the low amount of goals they'd scored. But at least it looks a little bit better for them in the table, Steve, with that win. Big result. Well done to Haugesund. It puts them now, still rock bottom of the league, but at least they've got 5 points. They are only 4 points off Strømsgodset, but it's not going to get them out of relegation trouble. They're 14 points off Bryn in 14th place to get a relegation playoff, and they're 15 points off Kristiansand to get anywhere near getting out of this. So with 12 games left, they're going to need a minor miracle to do anything but go down. But at least, maybe someone did listen to the pod, or maybe they've just bucked up their ideas, and like you say, they've managed to get a pretty solid win. Steve, I think that game did have some repercussions though, because I think I'm right in saying that Christian Mikkelsen's been sacked. Christian Mikkelsen's been sacked by Salzburg today, according to what I'm reading.
Salzburg do need to be discussed because there's a big transfer as well. They're actually suddenly looking down below them rather above them now. And they've just lost the best player.
Yeah, we do have a listener question from Spongy, but I think we'll dig into it next week because we'll kind of...
Mikkelsen has been sacked, actually, yeah. He's out the door. Yeah, he's out the door.
We'll talk about that on another show because we're running out of time a little bit there. Spongy's question was who should they consider to hire? But I think you've already answered that with the K-Film discussion, so maybe. Wink, wink. So we'll leave that for now, but that is a big news, and obviously this is what happens when you lose to a team that we described as potentially the worst in Eliteserien history, Steve. You're out the door, so a big repercussions there. True. In terms of the win, but congratulations to them for getting that win. But that'll be it for part 1, really. I think we would kind of...
I wouldn't have fired him, by the way, Christian Mikkelsen, just before we'll talk maybe more later about it. But I think that's a poor decision. But maybe losing to the worst ever team in Eliteserien history is a firing offence automatically. I don't know. But I have sympathy for Christian Mikkelsen. If you're listening, Christian, let's have you on the pod and let's talk about what's gone on there at Sarpsborg, because I think that would be a great listen, actually. A manager that I do have a lot of time for.
Well, he's got some free time now, so if you're quick to reach out to him, you might grab him before he gets his next job. But yeah, we will sort of dip into that a little bit, maybe even in part 2 if we've got a little bit more time. But we probably need to wrap up part 1. Steve, just two little brief things. Molde have been slightly improved. I don't want you to get too much into it, but you might want to just have a quick comment. I know you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I think the big thing to talk about really is this big move from Salzburg to FC20. A big transfer's gone on.
Well, yes, Andreas Scheiter, 5 million move to FC20. I banged on about this lad probably for the last 12 months. And I couldn't believe that no decent club was getting him. Finally, he's left Norway to the Dutch league. And I think it's a great signing. I think brilliant inside forward, inverted winger sort of player. And I think he'll go very well in the Netherlands. £5 million for Salzburg. That's a decent return on their money. And, it's a big loss for them as well. But he definitely outgrown the club. And to be honest, he had outgrown the league. And Molde, just before we go, Jonathan, you always used to message me when Molde were losing every week. Are they going to get relegated? How bad are they? And I responded, right, with a prediction for their next 6 games on a I think it's 20. I've found it now. 28th of July. This was right. And we're halfway through those 6 games. And I've correctly predicted all 3 of them. I said they'd beat Bryn. I said they'd beat HamKam. I said they'd draw against Molde, against KFUM Oslo. And the next prediction on my list is a draw at home against Tromsø. So let's see if, and then 2 wins after that against Molde and against Strømsgodset and Fredrikstad. So the fixtures are king. They always have been king. They had a nice run coming and they have improved. It doesn't mean they're out of the woods as a elite force again, though. But they have improved. They couldn't get much worse, could they? When you're asking me every week, could they get relegated?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit tongue-in-cheek. I didn't really expect it. But yeah, of course. I mean, I think you one of the managers sacked at one point. So maybe, I don't know, maybe he listens to this podcast as well. So yeah, a week of being proved wrong. I'm up for that. You know, we leave our comments out there, and then if people want to prove us wrong, so yeah, massive congratulations to Mulder for the bit of an uptick in form. Congratulations to you for your predictions, and congratulations to Haugesund for finally getting a win and scoring 3 goals. And congratulations to Glimt, 1 foot in the Champions League. When we come back in part 2, we will briefly recap what's going on in Sweden. We've talked about Malmö, of course, and a few of the other teams in Europe, but we'll just recap the league, some exciting title races going on there, and we'll have a look a little bit lower down the table as well. But join us after this short break.
Welcome to part 2 of the Nordic Football Podcast. It was quite an extensive part 1, actually, so this is not going to be an even split today. But nevertheless, this is part 2. And yet again, Mjällby continue to lead the way in Allsvenskan. In fact, they've extended their lead at the top of the table, 47 points. They're on 42 for Hammarby. Everyone's played the same number of games in Allsvenskan. Malmö in third on 36 with Elfsborg, and then Gais on 35. It looks 2-horse race. This one, you with Steve Wyss and Jonathan Fadugba. Jonathan, are you starting to think it could be Mjällby's year? Do you now admit it is a 2-horse race?
Yeah, in the words of Dagbladet, if you listen to part 1, I would use the same headline that their journalist wrote at the end of that Glimt-Graz game. I would put "done" in big letters with an exclamation mark for Malmö. No coming back for them. But you can never write them off. But I do think they will go on a bit of a run now, to be fair, because they're the kind of team that once there's nothing to play for, maybe the pressure will go off them. But I think they're out of it. And as far as Mjällby goes, well, it's a tricky one because they've extended their lead, but it's only by the virtue of Hammarby losing. So both sides are starting to feel maybe a little bit of the pressure. Neither side picked up the win at the weekend. Bit of squeaky bum time maybe coming in. I have to firstly give a massive shout out. We did talk about it a little bit in part 1, but Mjällby's result at Malmö was, I think, a historic moment for Allsvenskan, to be honest. Like, not maybe a change in the guard, because Malmö are always going to be, they had record revenue last year. Malmö will always be back. But in terms of proper statement, like, we're going for this title, that was a big result, massive result, huge to win away from home at Malmö like that and basically knock them out of the title race. I think it took huge cojones, Steve, to use the Spanish word. Huge balls, I think, is what Mjällby showed in that game because of the pressure that they've been under. Malmö were up for it, and they just basically swatted them away like a fly, and came away with all 3 points, as they've done several times over the past 3-4 years. Certainly in the Torstenson era, they seem to have the number on Malmö when they play them away from home. Great away record there, and they didn't buckle under that pressure. So first things to say is massive congratulations for that win. They then followed it up with I did say, didn't I, in the last episode, Steve, if they win both games, I think they win the title. They didn't beat Djurgården. They were 1-0 down, but they did manage to come back, and that point could end up being the key difference because obviously Hammarby lost. So in terms of answering your question, yes, I think it is over for Malmö personally. My pre-season prediction, I think that is done. Now, there is an element of concern, Steve, that I will just mention. Our partners, Y-Scout, if you look at expected goals charts, if you're a believer in that sort of thing, then are the goals drying up a little bit for Mjällby? Would be my only little question mark. In terms of expected goals, Steve, according to our partners Huddle Y Scout, they are 9th in the table. Now, they have scored a lot of goals, but their XG is apparently 9th in the league, which is quite poor, really, when you think about it, to be honest. So that's one thing that could be a little bit of a cause for concern. And the other thing I'd say, Steve, in terms of cause for concern potentially, is the fact that like bees to honey, Steve, the big boys around Europe cannot keep their mitts off Mjällby right now. Every day I wake up is a new rumour. I mean, I know that there's the transfer window going on, and sort of, you've got Jim White in his yellow tie and everything like that, and the transfer show on Sky at 5 p.m. where they sort of talk about the same player for 3 hours or whatever. But in Sweden, Steve, you could talk about the whole Mjällby squad. You could have a 12-hour podcast about each player that's linked with a rumour, because the goalkeeper's apparently leaving, the left back's apparently leaving, the centre midfielder's already gone, the striker's apparently leaving, the right back's now getting links at different places. I started to wonder at some point, Steve, is Fabrizio Romano sort of a plant trying to sort of maybe shatter their dreams, Malby's, because they're sort of, once he starts talking, then a transfer's imminent. Tornquist, the goalkeeper, Steve, has been excellent, and I know you like a goalkeeper. He's reportedly in advanced talks with Brest. Como and Serie A are also swooping around him, apparently very interested. The only good caveat there is that he might sign an agreement where he stays till the end of the season and then leaves if they hopefully maybe win the league from their point of view. So he might not leave now, but he's strongly rumoured to be leaving to maybe the League One or Italy. Stroud, recent days, he's had rumours for quite a while, to be fair, about a year now, because he's very, very good. I'm surprised he's still in the league, actually, Stroud. And I think the title race probably has kept him maybe a bit longer than he might have stuck around for. But it's no surprise he's linked with moves. Rockyar's already gone, as we mentioned, to Denmark. Abdoulaye Mane is now linked with the move to Olympiacos. Kalmaris Axum did say on that podcast, if you go back on our recent episode with Kalmaris Axum interview with their assistant manager, he said he thinks he will play in the Premier League, about Abdoulaye Mane. So that was a big quote. If you go back and listen to that excellent interview, he's linked with a move to Greece. And this is a bit of a worry for Mjällby, because they're going to have to hold off this transfer window. They need this transfer window over, because otherwise, one or two more players lost, and their title race could be that could jeopardize the whole season. Hammarby are also in a similar situation, but they've managed to hold off some of the rumours. I'm surprised Pinas hasn't gone yet, to be honest. For example, I thought he would leave. He was strongly linked to a move and hasn't transpired, and the rumours have gone quiet, so it looks like he's sticking around, which is a good move, a good, massive thing for them, because they need him. You just mentioned there they've signed the lad from KFM. They've also signed Nikola Vasic, massive signing from Bromma Poikina. We have to talk about that. Hammarby fan at heart. So, yeah, the league's getting very, very exciting. Mjällby have been excellent this season, Steve. I mentioned on the last show that they're nearly setting records in terms of points per game in Allsvenskan. And Hammarby have somehow kept up with them. So fair play.
Yeah, I mean, both teams have been pretty good this season. Let's talk about the weekend matches, because Hammarby did lose and Mjällby nearly lost. Mjällby, that last-minute equaliser against Djurgården. Let's be honest, they're outplayed by Djurgården in this game. More about Djurgården soon. I don't think it's a disgrace, as I think Djurgården are playing as well as anyone right now. But that was a really good... it reminded me of the Leicester City season, when this does have Leicester City vibes to a degree, doesn't it? By the way, if they win it, you can compare it to that way. But there was a run that Leicester had. I think it was around sort of springtime, early spring. I think it was West Ham at home, and they were 1-0 down for a lot of the game, and they got given a penalty late on. They didn't play well. West Ham had come and actually did a job on them, but they were given a late penalty. I think Vardy took it away, 1-1 draw, and the fans went absolutely bonkers. And they kind of never looked back from that again. It was a really big momentum. It was a draw, but it was a massive momentum draw. And I just wonder if I had the same vibes from that equaliser. When I look at the fans, look at what it meant to them. Big result. It almost showed that they got a point without playing that well. So big point for them. Hammarby have only lost 4 games all season, but 4 losses have come against Mjällby twice and Gais twice. They've got no problems against any other teams. So what have those two teams got on them? And that's a hammer blow, considering I know they've been in Europe and it was not maybe a good time for the match, but that's a hammer blow of a loss at home to Gais. I know Gais are decent as well, but somehow Mjällby have gained the advantage on the top. But is it a concern for both teams that they were they were second best, both of them at the weekend?
Well, the first thing to say, Steve, I think Gais are an excellent side. I think Gais. I'll say it on record. I think Gais could be the next Mjällby if they continue to build. If they manage to get some finances, they're well supported. If you saw the derby last week, the EF actually won, and EF, by the way, they're having a pretty good season in fairness, especially in the big games, which they have failed in the recent years. But if you saw the Gais fans before that match, and I remember being in Gothenburg and seeing the Gais fans, they are a bit of a rowdy bunch, Gais fans. They were marching through the town square, all dressed in black, and it was a bit of an intimidating sight on their way to that derby game, dancing around and stuff like that in the streets of Gothenburg in the middle of the day. But they got good fans, and I think that if they can manage to keep this manager, guys, they're one to watch in the coming years, because I do think Allsvenskan's a little bit open at the moment. I think there's no real number 2 to Malmö. Everyone expected Oiko and Djurgården to sort of be the number 2s this year, maybe. And Hammarby, of course, which they have done, but maybe there's a gap there. There is a gap. There's a genuine gap there, and this is what I mean. It's there for the taking for them to win the title. And I think Gais could fit into that in the year to come. EF maybe as well. The way things are going for them at this moment in time, they've got momentum, and they're a massive club. So I think there is a bit of a sort of a gap at this moment in time for a potential title contender, and Mjällby are filling that right now. I take your point on board in terms of Mjällby, what it means for them, and I think it's a massive boon. I think this weekend's huge, Steve. Mjällby Gais. I think that is, as Super Sundays go, I think it is huge, really, because it's on a Monday for a start, but but anyway, you know what, you get the point. Gais Mjällby Monday evening in front of the fans in Gothenburg. You could call it Monday Night Football then, really. You know what I mean? Carragher will be there, and Neville will be there, and they'll talk about sort of Liverpool probably when they should be talking about Gais Mjällby, but I think that's a massive game. If Mjällby go there and win, everyone will take their sit up and take notice, because as you said, Hammarby failed against Gais, but on both occasions, and they really struggled at Gais. And we had a listener who even emailed us after that game that he went to it, and he talked about the atmosphere and how impressed he was, and how he loved the fan experience of Swedish football. This is going to be a cracker, this one. I think Gais will be up for it. They're potentially looking at Europe, maybe. So, and Gais are a massive club, Steve. Historically, they're a big. You talk about Fredrikstad. Gais are a big club, and they deserve European football in some ways. And they've been in the doldrums for so long. They are a bit like Fredrikstad in some ways, actually, in terms of their history. Been in the doldrums, down in the second division, lower leagues, went down to the third division, Steve. Looked like they were all over, came back up again. So they've really had a roller coaster ride, and they could end up in Europe. So that's a big game for them, but for Mjällby, it's also huge. And I'm going to be really excited for that one. Hammarby, they've obviously identified, Steve, that they're not quite the finished article yet, I think. And I think that's why they've gone into the market. They've bought Vasic. They've bought this lad from Fredrikstad Okeke. I think that they needed some reinforcements up front. I don't think they've really, I think you touched on it earlier, I don't think they've got kind of like a go-to on the wide areas. I think they've really missed, I can't remember his name now, to be fair. His name's completely, Basil Manatore, who went to Hoffenheim. And by the way, I saw a Hoffenheim game and I thought he was really good. I was doing some digging on Benjamin Sesko. If you follow me on Twitter, you might have unfollowed me by now if you've been watching my Sesko tweets, because I did lose a few followers after slamming him. But I've been watching a few Bundesliga games to get an idea on Sesko, and I watched him play against Hoffenheim, and I thought Toure looked really good in that game, by the way. Hammarby made big money out of him, and I think he's got real potential. But yeah, they've missed him a lot, and I don't think they've really replaced those wide areas. They've got Tunekti, Majed. They're sort of hit and miss. Still think they need a bit of consistency in there. Basara's having a legendary season, leading from the front, really, in terms of the captain's role he plays. But yeah, Hammarby have dipped into the market, and I think those reinforcements will be quite important for them. The Arabi rumours are still, Arabi's kind of it looks like with Vasic they're moving on to a different kind of striker. So some really big games to come in the next few weeks, Steve. Because for Mjällby, after this guys game, the fixtures get a little bit easier for them. They've got Halmstad, I think, and then Degerford. So realistically, if they can get through Geis, they've got a clear run at maybe 3-4 wins that could take them on to the brink of the title.
Guys are the favourites with the bookmakers to win this game, about 2.2. I said, didn't I, a few games ago that they had a tough run here, Mjällby, that they had to negotiate. And at the moment, they've done a great job of it. After this, it gets rather easy on paper. Again, titles aren't won on paper, but Halmstad, Degerfors, Osters, Brommerpoiken. That's a nice run of games. Then they've got Elfsborg and IFK Göteborg, and then they finish the season with Norrköping, Varnamo, and Häcken. That's a nice run. I think Hammarby's fixtures are much tougher on paper. They've got 2 Stockholm derbies to negotiate as well on there. They've got Malmö away. They've got IFK Göteborg away as well. They've got an Elfsborg as well still on the card. They've got a nice couple of games coming up soon. Sirius and Oster. That should be 6 points, really. But this is the one, isn't it? You're right. I mean, Mike Quayle, you might have heard him in the background there. He hasn't piped up all night. And he was very vocal when you were just talking about this game. My animals have a distinct nous to know when it's a big talking point. I don't know what it means. But we know it's a huge game.
I'll tell you what it means, Steve. I'll tell you what it means. I remember your beloved cat talking about Glimt back in the day. And as you were just talking about your Quayle, I literally, before you started talking about it, I had a prediction to make. And you know me, Steve, my backside does like the fence. But I'm going to predict that if Malmö beat Geis this weekend, I think they'll win the league. Like, I think your Quayle is onto something here.
He knows the importance.
Quayle has identified what I think as well. And I think if Mjällby win this weekend, I'll stick my neck on the line and say they'll win the title. I think Hammarby's games are going to be... This is the problem when you're a Stockholm team, to be honest. Because Mjällby is a small place, Steve. It's basically a beach. And if you've noticed, some of our listeners have seen that, the BBC have written about them, The Guardian are writing about them. This is a Leicester City story. This is 500-1, Vardy vibes, Jacob Bergstrom lifting the title, never been done, kind of like a historic moment, what we're looking at here if this happens. And I think this game is a little bit like, I think the Malmö game was, do you remember when Leicester won the league and they beat City away?
Yeah.
When Mahrez and turned up and everyone thought that they were going to, this would be the end of them. It's a little bit different context wise, but I think in terms of level of performance, going to the biggest team and beating them. And then I think Leicester lost to Arsenal, didn't they, at one point? And then it looked like maybe it would be wobbly, and then they came back. I think if Mjällby beat Geis away, the rest of their fixtures are manageable. I think they've still got room to drop a few points, because I think they will drop. There'll be games that everyone expects them to win, where I think they will drop some points, because having never won a title before, it's a different mindset you need. But Torstenson, Steve, we've had him on this podcast. He mentally, and he's had a lot to deal with in his personal life as well, with his illness, and mentally, I can imagine they are mentality masters behind the scenes. I reckon they're properly drilled. I can't see them bottling too many games, but of course you're going to have a wobbles, aren't you? Like the Djurgården game. But Hammarby's run is tough, like you've just said there, and I think even that Malmö game, it's going to be hard to go and beat Malmö. I think Malmö now will probably, unless they catch them on a sort of European match or something like that, I think Malmö will sharpen up a little bit. And then the Stockholm teams, they'd love nothing more than to ruin Hammarby's title, because that's just what they do. So they've got really tough games to navigate. But I have to say, for Hammarby, on the positive, I think Vasic is a good signing. He's a Hammarby fan, born and raised. They tweeted a picture, Steve, of him in the Hammarby kit when he was a kid. And he had a massive grin on his face. And I was so happy to see him back, because, Steve, he would have probably made this move a year ago, at the end of last season. He was the Golden Boot winner. He was unbelievable for Brommerpoiken. He turned into sort of a bit of a slower version of Haaland. Sort of Haaland if he pressed 0.5 speed last season, goals after goals. And then he did his cruise shot on the last day of the season. And he missed so much time. And then he would have probably got a big move. But maybe sometimes, Steve, in life, these things happen for a reason. And he's now got his move to, I think there was a clause maybe in his contract for free that he could leave for certain clubs. And maybe, obviously, Hammarby was one of them. I don't know if that's sort of like a romantic... Alexander Isak might be wishing he had that in his contract. You can leave to your dream club for free. But he's got his move now, and he could be the one that fires them to the title. So they will be motivated, but they have got a tough schedule to come, I think.
Yeah, this is. I mean, one massive bit of team news, of course, is that the leading goal scorer in Allsvenskan, Ibrahim Diabate, suspended for Geist. I mean, that's a serious bit of luck. It's probably going to be the only game he misses all season, unless he gets transferred out. So, you could almost say maybe, is these sort of things written for Mjällby? Who's going to win the title?
Who's going to win the title?
Yeah, prediction here.
Mjällby.
Here you go. I think Mjällby as well. And I also think towards the end of the season, this happened with Leicester. It felt like everyone else, apart from what Spurs fans eventually wanted Leicester to win the title, didn't they? I think everyone else is going to want Mjällby to win it. Hammarby have too many rivals, don't they? Not just from Stockholm, but the likes of Malmö, EFK. They're not going to want Hammarby to win it. They'll give it a lot more effort against Hammarby than I think they probably would against Mjällby if it's a dead rubber game for the team. Malmö, of course. I mean, Malmö definitely for me would probably finish third because the chasing pack it's just not happened for the chasing pack. Malmö have won for the. So go on.
We shouldn't disrespect Hammarby though, Steve. I think they will compete, and I think they've got potential to go all the way. I think they'll beat some of these other teams that we expect, like derbies and things like that. They've shown a capacity for resilience, but I think the key for them is obviously Pissarro's form, but I also think that it's how they navigate those big games. But I just think, Steve, we do need to add a caveat. I would say Mjällby, but my caveat is if they lose any of those players between now and the end of the window, then I think they are sort of starting to chug a little bit, run out of steam a little bit. So I don't think it's done yet. I would say that so far, Hammarby are having a better window in terms of bringing players. So they might build up some momentum here where Mjällby are maybe running out of steam a little bit. Can't even for Tornquist. Okay, you can move in the summer, you can move in the winter. Sorry, but all those negotiations day in day out, Steve, are going to be affecting him. Do you know what I mean? Behind the scenes, he's going to be distracted. He will be distracted, regardless of if he's leaving now or not. Stroud will be distracted, and that will psychologically play a part. I think they need to get this window out of the way, and everyone knowing their futures, and then they can focus. Because that is to me, that's the one caveat. If this rumbles on a bit longer, Hammarby don't look like they're going away really. So that is my caveat. But the way things are looking, I just think that Torstensson, the staff he's built around him, I just think the mentality of the club, the resilience they've shown in games like Malmö away, the resilience they've shown, at Djurgården to get a point late on, like you said. But the Diabate thing, I mean, he did miss a penalty the other day, so he's tailing off form-wise a little bit. So maybe it's good that he's misses a game here and there. But yeah, I think for now I'm going to have to say, Steve, I think Malmö are the favourites.
Yeah, Hammarby have been, they're averaging 2.1 points per game. That would get them 63 points, and that wins a title most years in Allsvenskan. It might win them a title if they keep that average points record. It's a great chance for them as well. They might not get a better chance to win a title than in future years. Malmö usually come on strong with teams like IK, Djurgården. I just said they're the chasing pack. It's not really happened for them. Malmö have won 4 of the last 5, but they were disappointing before that. AIK, what's happened there? They've really drifted off the pace after an encouraging start. Elfsborg looked like getting back into it at one point, but they've dropped points as well. What's gone wrong with the chasing pack? Apart from Malmö, we touched on obviously at the start of the show. What about the rest of them? Because the teams like Geis and EFK, Göteborg, arguably look better than them other teams at the minute.
Yeah, and by the way, I should just quickly add on Mjällby. I need to sort of check what's happened with Mane, but according to some reports, like the bid with Olympiacos has been accepted. According to apparently the Gambian Romano, who's quite respected, and must obviously be quite well linked to those players, maybe. So I don't know what Gambian is, but here we go. But that if they lose him, like I say, but yeah,
they're going to get players in though. Like the thing is, right? The difference now is if Mjällby had lost players in the past, they would have replaced them. But surely there's got to be an attraction for players to come in. They could win a title here. They could get a couple of good players in.
Maybe, but at this late stage, it's tough to sort of like, the dressing room is important, right? What you've built in the dressing room in a title race is really important. I mean, imagine if Leicester had lost Mahrez in the middle of the season. Like, it's you can replace him, but
True.
you can't replace that vibe. So it's very difficult. Moving on to sort of like your questions around it, Oikor and others, I think that it's a tough time for Oikor right now, Steve. They were well beaten against EFK Göteborg. I think that there are some problems at Oiko at the moment. I think that there's a bit of pressure building on the manager. I know he's got a good record in terms of, you know, XG and things like that, and I know he's well respected, but I don't know, Steve. I think there's kind of there's rumblings at Oiko at the moment. I think there's not really a huge amount of happiness. I think that European defeat was a blow. I think Europe does have a psychological effect on these big clubs like Stockholm clubs, Malmö. Just how they do really affects how they're perceived and how the fans perceive them as well. I think that does really affect some of these bigger clubs. There's an expectation that they should be doing a little bit better. When you look at the likes of Glimt or you look at the likes of some of the Norwegian teams getting deep runs or Djurgården. Yeah, I think EFK did a number on them. There was an interesting post. An EFK fan posted John Guidetti's highlight reel. That seems to be a trend these days, doesn't it? Post highlight reels after games of like one player. I saw even in pre-season people were posting clips of like players in pre-season now. It's become a thing, hasn't it? Watching the pre-season, like watching the highlights of one player, and they posted Guidetti's clips of him just basically losing the ball for 3 minutes or whatever it was, and EFK fans had a good laugh about that against their old rival Oikor. They have signed a few players. I think they've signed a lad called Mamini. I don't know too much about. We'll talk about him another time. But yeah, they're kind of rumbling along. I don't think they've been great. Steve, I want to ask you something, right? Because you keep talking about Jurgen. Now, why are you saying all this? I've got it in the itinerary here. A diff good or a diff not good? Because I can't make my mind up. You seem to be really big on them. They've had some decent results at times, but they're still kind of lagging in the league a little bit. I think they're not having the best of seasons. I want to ask you about them because they're still eighth. Are they good or are they not good? Because you quite like them.
I think they're very good. I think they're playing. I think they're playing as well as anyone in the league right now. I think they're a terrible fixture for anyone, as the Mjällby result showed. They're dominating every game that they're playing in. Their metrics are brilliant. I've got them down. I think they finished on 52 points. I've got them on. Where will that get you? Fourth, third, even. If they keep it up, I think they. I say every time I watch them play, and I kind of foresaw it coming because the squad is quite good. They had so many injuries. They had the Conference League run. They've got no pressure on their shoulders whatsoever. They're 28 points on the board and at 8th in the table. They can play with freedom. They're enjoying the football they're playing. What they're missing is just they're not always converting the chances into goals. They battered Häcken 6-1 away. But since then, they drew against Halmstad again. They should have absolutely dominated. They should have won easily. They drew in the derby against Oikor away, 0-0. That's actually good for them. They normally lose derbies, don't they? So that's a positive. And then, they should have beaten Mjällby. So right now, I think Djurgården are playing as well as anyone in the league. They can beat anyone on the day. I mean, look at some of the players I really like. I did kind of criticise him a little bit, didn't I, at one point? But Tokmak Gwen, do you know his form has improved actually a lot? I still don't think he's a number 9, but he has definitely improved his output. I really like the lad, the defender Kosugri. How is he still there? Someone surely is going to snap him up before the end of the window. I think the Japanese defender's brilliant. Gullikson, we've talked about him before, really good player. The defence in general is quite strong. And they've, even players like your Priskas of this world, the injuries have dried up now. They're a dangerous, dangerous team, Djurgården. They've got a nice fixture list towards the end of the season. I rate them very, very highly. It's very hard. It's actually really hard to rank Allsvenskan teams. If people said, who are the top 5, who are the best 5 teams, it's really hard to say. But I think they're playing as well as anyone, I think is my point.
Compelling argument there, to be fair. I mean, I don't personally see it at the moment. I think they're still a bit flaky. I know what you mean by underlying metrics. I suppose their XG is not bad. Is that what you're alluding to, maybe?
Well, it isn't just that. I think the eye test as well. They dominate fixtures. Like if it was a golfing term, tee to green, they're brilliant. But on the putting green, they're just not quite making enough putts, and they still concede the odd goal randomly out of nowhere. I look at some of the games they haven't won, and I'm like, how have they not actually won those games? Strange stuff, really. They sometimes find ways to self-destruct, but I'm keeping my eye on them. They're a team I want on side. I know the bookmakers rate them very highly. Every week, you look at the odds that Djurgården are, and you will think, wow, they are really short there in the betting. Which shows you how much the bookmakers respect them. And some will say, oh, the bookies know nothing. But they know what they're doing. I mean, they're 1.5 to beat Bromma this weekend. Bromma aren't that bad a team. That is how much Djurgården are rated. They're rated a -1 goal favourite at home to Bromma.
I mean, I'm tempted to take that on from what you just said there. Like, I don't know about Djurgården. I'll be honest, my read on some of the teams this season is a bit. I don't think there's not many teams I can really call in terms of what to expect from them. There's quite a few teams I'm a bit. I said it on the last show. I think the level is. I'm questioning the level a little bit this season of teams in some ways, and that's why I like guys so much in terms of you know what you're going to get in some ways from them. But yeah, I can't see. I wouldn't be putting my money anywhere near your one on that price, for example. But you never know. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe they'll win 5-0. Let's look at the relegation battle before we wrap up, because we've had quite a long show on this one. But you know, there was no show last week, so listeners, you get a bit of a treat. I think when you talk about teams that impressed me, I've been impressed with EF Core lately. I think things are clicking a little bit for them in terms of big games that I don't expect them to win. Or Geis,
Derby.
That was a massive win to beat Geis. Tobias Heinz is on form. I think they're EF Core impressed me this season, in fairness, considering all the changes and nearly getting relegated. I think they've had a pretty good year, and they're kind of around mid-table as well, aren't they? But quite an unpredictable league, really. If you're asking me top 5 right now, I don't know who I would have as a top 5 as it finishes.
It's difficult.
I definitely have Hammarby, Mjällby, and Geis in there somewhere, but I don't know who would be 4th and 5th. But we do need to talk about relegation battle, Steve, because there's
a question, Jonathan, just before we this is a good one to lean into the relegation battle. Tom Carberry has asked, I love this question. I've got plenty to say about this team. How bad is it going to get for Degerfors? The relegation battle is kind of game on now, because there was a big result the weekend. Värnamo beat Degerfors. I mean, we'd written Värnamo off, hadn't we? But they're back in the race. They're only 6 points off the playoff now. They look the best team down there at the moment to me. 12 points, though. 15 points for Degerfors, 18 Halmstad, Oster on 18. Sirius won 2 in a row now to 20 points. And then you're looking at Norrköping on 22. Häcken as low as 10th on 23 points and haven't had a win for quite some time. I know you've got a bit to say about Häcken. Could they get sucked into relegation trouble? But this relegation battle is, it's not as certain as it was.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, the first thing I think it's a credit to Osters. They got a massive result beating Häcken away from home. I think that they've really been a credit to this league, because I think they're clearly one of the worst teams, but they've really fought, Steve. They haven't done Haugesund. They haven't done Ivanovo up to this point in terms of just losing every week. They've really squeezed out everything they can, every drop they can. I think Osters really to just be on an even keel. They've now climbed out of the relegation battle, and they've given themselves a real chance of surviving. I think there are quite a few teams that I don't rate really in this league at this moment in time, and I think that also plays into it. I think Sirius are pretty average, all things considered. They've had a few decent results here and there, but very unpredictable. I think Beko Häcken, Steve, I might save them for another time, because I think they could get relegated, to be honest. I think if the rubber of the green didn't go their way, I think they might wake up one morning and find themselves in a relegation battle, a bit like EF Core last year. So I think they need to be very, very careful. We also got Europe as well. So, good luck to them in Europe, but they're not far off it, Steve. And I think they're horrendous right now in terms of some of the games I've seen. Very open, like you said, got battered a few weeks ago. Halmstad, they battle a little bit, but then you got Degerfors. I looked at Henrik Goitem's face, Steve, after that game. against Varnamo, and I saw a man contemplating his fate. To be honest, I saw a man who wasn't sure where he was. You know, I saw a man looking into space, if you know what I mean, where the camera panned around him and it was like he'd gone somewhere into the distance. And that does worry me, actually, Degerfors. They've had a few reinforcements, but I worry about them. And then obviously, like you say, Varnamo have started to come out of it a little bit. They've actually made some signings. Antonson's back. I think he's getting a few goals. I think that they have given themselves a chance, obviously, with a manager change. Going to be very exciting. I think there'll be some not great quality games, but there's going to be some high stakes games in the end of the last 10 for those sort of 6-7 teams. I don't think Norrköping will go down. I think they're okay, but even them, you know, they're not far off it. So I think it's a very exciting relegation battle.
Yeah, there's a big game this weekend as well. Varnamo against Häcken. I think Varnamo actually win that game. From what I've seen recently, they've looked a lot better. Even in the matches they haven't been winning, they've looked decent. Halmstad just 15 goals scored all season. They haven't got enough goals in them. Simple as that. I think they go down. Degerfors, dear oh dear. I mean, we used the word done, haven't we, on this pod quite a few times. I think, yeah, they're like the Christmas turkey. Stick a fork in them. They are done. This is right. I've got some stats here about Degerfors. They're a disgrace. Since the sort of international break, they played 8 games, 6 losses, 2 defeats. Goal differential 4-20.
6 losses, 2 defeats.
Yeah.
Even draws.
6 losses, 2 draws. The 2 draws were 0-0s. 6 of those 8 games they blanked in, failed to score. 9 defeats this season by 2 goals or more margin. Like, when they lose big. They're just not good enough. And I know Goitom is not fully to blame for this, but I just don't. He hasn't got enough tools to work with. They look horrific at both ends of the field. I mean, look at the next 3 fixtures. They've got AEK at home, Malmö away, Mjällby at home. It's not going to get any easier for the Degerfors, is it? They're going down with a whimper. I think they're the worst team in Allsvenskan right now. And I think they'll finish bottom of the table myself. Not good enough. Look, we talked off air before the start of this recording that, maybe can't be too harsh on them. They're a promoted team, right? So it's you don't want to be too harsh on promoted teams.
I mean, you reserve more anger for them than Haugesund, who've got worse stats. I mean, I do get what you're saying. I think they will probably go down. But
it's the way they're doing it. I just don't see it like Goitom. It's like
they're just not. They're not good. They're just not. They're a newly promoted side. They're not great. Simple.
No, they're not good enough.
I don't think it's like a massive. I don't think they're a disgrace. It's just they're just not good. But there are other teams that are not good as well. I think Häcken deserve a bit more higher.
Maybe disgrace is a harsh word, actually.
Yeah, I just think they're not a very good side.
Maybe
but they could still, Steve, they could still get out of it. To be honest, I don't think they're actually out of it. To be honest.
Well, no one's out of it. That's the thing. Nobody is out of it right now.
Poor teams, like you talked about Sweden, and Norway. I will say, and I like to be a fair man when I can. I think it's a poor league this year. To be honest, I don't think it's a great league. I think there's managers that haven't got the best out of certain squads. Sometimes it's the managers, maybe. Sometimes it's the squad's not good enough. In some cases, it's just bad luck. Losing good players, which I think could maybe cost Mjällby the title at the way we're going. I think at some points it's like that. It's just the fact that they can't keep on to some of the players, and that affects the whole management of the squad. I think in some cases, Steve, it's like Osters. They're draining every single ounce of blood they can, and they're still treading water, really. I don't think the league's fantastic. But the weird thing about the league, I think, this year, Steve, is it's kind of like they're not great, but they also seem to be able to pluck results out of random places. Like Halmstad, they've picked up a few good results, actually, if you look at the last sort of 6-7 games. Results that you wouldn't expect, if you get what I mean. So there's a bit of unpredictability because there's not many good teams either who are guaranteed to batter these teams.
Well, what there is it's interesting. We've got a gap here. The top 7 teams all have at least 34 points. And then 9th down is 23 points or few. There's one team completely no man's land, that's Djurgården, 28. They're lost in the middle there. So you could say 9th and below is a pretty poor standard because already a huge gap. sort of between that area and 7th. So I think you're probably right there.
Yeah, it's not, and for me, I found it a little bit hard to predict this league this season. But that actually even leads me on to the final point, Steve, because I think we're looking at almost a 2-hour show here, which is
We are. It's a special bonus this for people. They're gonna love this.
I think you're kind of hopefully, but we'll need a rest for a few weeks after this, maybe. But I just want to ask you one question actually that you've reminded me of, because I was thinking about this in the week. Is there, just looping back into Eliteserien, I'm looking at the Obos Liga. Lillestrøm are 10 points clear, and they're having an unbeaten season at the moment. 19 played, they haven't lost a single game. They're basically going to come straight back up. Steve, I looked at last season, Vålerenga. They got 69 points. They only lost 3 in 30, and they won the league pretty comfortably. They were 16 points ahead of third place, Moss. And then there was another season, I think a couple of years before that, where the team had like nearly an unbeaten season as well. Brann,
yeah,
in 2022. So we just talked about the relegation battle in Sweden. I just want to ask you quickly: is the gap between the top in Norway now getting too big for the Obos? Are we going to see a Haugesund unbeaten season next year, for example?
Oh, I think what's happened in Eliteserien is some big teams have been relegated. Really big teams in the last few years. Lillestrøm, I think, twice. Brann, Viking, not that many years ago, 6 or 7. I think what it shows is Eliteserien is strong in general for these big teams to go down in the first place. So when they come down, they're simply too good for Obos. But I think a side like Haugesund, I mean, Stabæk are second bottom.
Yeah, that was the other question I was going to say. I mean, what's going on there?
So I think when Haugesund go down, I don't know where they'll be. I don't think they'll be top 2, but I don't think they'll be probably playoffs. They might be sort of an unusual one in that respect. Just one question. I don't want to forget this guy. Rick Flair says, how good is best thought Zanelli? We've not even talked about Elfsborg on this pod, but he's been a really good fantasy asset this season. And that is shot here. We just literally has asked the question 5 minutes ago. I'll try and get back to you on X about their shot here. But best for Zanelli before final point of the show. How good is he?
He's very good, Steve. I think if you look at, I think it was Henriksen who went to Blackburn from Gais recently. We didn't really talk about that. I think he's a similar potential level, Zanelli. He's a player I've had in my fantasy team from day one. And then I left him out. And then I watched one game and I was like, why did I leave him out? He's like the heartbeat of the side, pretty much. He can be hit and miss in terms of goals and assists. He's not like a rock sort of a creative player, but he's a rock in terms of leadership. I think he's a real leader of that team. I think he's very he's a strong player. I could see him going to a stronger league in terms of physicality. I could see him in the Championship, for example. I think he's got that sort of frame, very sort of big frame about him. Good on the ball. I think he's got personality. I think he can improve a lot. I think he's really developed in the last year as well. Good player. I do like him, actually. And I think he can add a goal and an assist. I think he does need to maybe get a little bit more creative, productive in terms of goals and assists. I think he can add that to his game, just get a little bit more consistent with that. But his all-round fundamentals in terms of a midfielder, he reminds me a little bit of. This might be a bit of a stretch, but he reminds me in some ways of his game a bit like Declan Rice, in terms of his physicality and his ability to sort of cover ground distances and get across the pitch and kind of play an all-round role in some respects. He's not at the level of Rice, don't get me wrong, but in terms of his physicality, and I like his leadership as well. I like the way he behaved with Johan Larsson when Larsson came back in that game, which was my favourite game of the season. That EF match, I won't forget that for a long time. I like the way he just behaved with him. He pushed into the crowd, and I think he gets it. He gets the fans, and I like players like that who kind of they understand what's going on the pitch around them. They've got kind of space. They've got awareness as to what's happening, emotional intelligence. So I think he's got a good future, Steve. It still needs to improve, maybe to go to the top level, but I think he's one that I'd be surprised if he's in the league in a year's time.
He's had a remarkable fantasy season. He's never scored more than 8 points, but only once has he scored less than 3 points in a game. That was against Djurgården away. So he just picks up so many. Declan Rice will be the same actually in Fantasy Premier League, won't he? So they are very, very similar players in type. No doubt about it. Good comparison. Shot here has asked, we'll start, do this on the next episode. I've been listening for years, but I've lost sight of how you guys started following these leagues and then started the pod. We need another 2 hours for that one, Jonathan. So that's going to have to wait for another episode.
To be continued. But
Yes.
we will, Steve, you need to write that down because I'm up for starting the next pod with that one.
Yes, it'll
It's
be
like
a great
story
starting
time.
point.
That's like question time.
It will be a great starting point. Wow, it's been a long one. Thanks everyone who's been listening this far. Hope you've enjoyed it. It was a great episode, one of the best of the year, actually. One of the best of the last 2 or 3 years, I would say.
You should see the look. Steve's got a big grin on his face.
It's been a good one. It's been good. We definitely be back after the resumption of we'll know the European teams. We'll know possibly the end of the transfer window as well. When does it close, Jonathan? 31st of August?
1st of September, I think.
Oh, get it closed. Sooner the better. Okay, take care, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. Remember, if you are watching on YouTube, do subscribe and like the channel. It all helps us. Leave comments on Spotify, X, stuff like that. Have you got any final words?
No, I think we've got a really exciting few weeks. So see you soon. Thank you for supporting as always. Patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. Thank you for everyone who supports it. And we'll be back very soon.
Goodbye, everyone. Take care.